Hello, it's Sonia here with The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. Today's video is going to be a pattern tutorial. We will be making a hat, and for this hat pattern I am using my eye hook or 5.5 millimeter, and I have worsted weight yarn, which is also usually labeled as number 4. So anyway, to start with this project, this hat is going to be made bottom up, so we are starting at the brim of the hat and then working up towards the crown of the head. And this hat is made in rows and is made in rounds. So we are going to be starting with the ribbing of the hat, and we're going to be using one of my favorite ribbing techniques. I love this technique because it kind of resembles a knitted ribbing a little bit, and I just think it's really nice for hats. So to start off with, I have my loop on my hook already. We are going to chain 12. Alright, so we have our 12 chains. We are going to double crochet, and all of my terms that I will be using in this pattern are US terms. So we're going to work in the 4th chain from our hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm working in the back bump of the chain, so I'm going to turn it over, and you will want to work in the back bump, and you'll find out later. So we're just going to work a double crochet. Now this skipped chain 3 is going to count as a stitch, so that we actually have 2 stitches now. So I'm going to continue to double crochet across. So at the end of this first row we will have a total of 10 double crochet. And here is our last chain, so popping in that double crochet. So let's double check, make sure we have 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, we're good to go. Okay, so the rest of the rows we will be working in the back loop only of our rows. So for row 2, you're going to chain 1, turn your work. So now we are going to slip stitch across this row of double crochet, and we're going to work in the back loop. So in that same stitch, this is my back loop, I'm going to work a slip stitch. So there's one, and with a rule of thumb with slip stitch is just keep a relaxed hand. You don't want it to be tight, so just keep your tension on the looser side, which is hard for me because I tend to be a tighter crocheter. Whoops. And my yarn's splitting. Awesome. Alright, there we go. So I'm just going to continue to slip stitch across in my back loops here. Alright, so now we're in the chain 3 that we skipped. Obviously we can't work in the back loop, so you're just going to work a slip stitch on the top of that chain. And now we have completed row 2. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. Just like that. And so this is row 3. All the odd rows will be a right side for this pattern, for the ribbing part. So even rows are wrong, odd rows are right. So we've chained 1 and turned. We're going to continue to work back loops. We're going to slip stitch across again. So slip stitch can be a little bit tricky of where to work. So I suggest if you have your work turned towards you like this, then you can see the tops of the stitches, and then you can see where to work. So there's my back loop. And again, keeping a relaxed hand. So you slip stitch in that same stitch and then continue across. Just like with single crochet, you usually slip stitch in the same single crochet in the same stitch, but we are slip stitching. we have 2 more to go, and you just want to keep track of your count because the stitches can get a little bit crunched together, so it can be easy to miss the last one, and you don't want to do that. Alright, so we have completed round 3, I mean not round, row 3. We're not in rounds yet. Alright, so row 4, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and it's going to be a repeat. We're slip stitching across again. So I'm turning my work towards me like that so I can see the tops of my stitches and working in the back loop there. And some people don't like working ribbing like this because it does take a little bit more time, but I just think it looks really, really nice. I think the payoff is worth it. So if you just hang in there, I think you'll be really pleased with the outcome. And we've got 2 more to go. And we're splitting up. Okay, so now we've worked row 4, so now we're going to start row 5. This is the repeat here. So we're chaining 3 and turning. That's going to count as our first stitch. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to continue to double crochet across. So you want to have a total of 10. So this counts as a stitch here. So again, you can turn your work towards you. And we don't want to work in this stitch here because then we're going to add stitches. So we're going to work in the next one because that is our second stitch, and just double crochet in the back loop. So as I said before, the rest of these rows are back loop only. We have 2 more to go, and the last couple stitches can sometimes get a little crunched up, so you just want to keep track of your stitch count so you don't miss it. But it's there. There we go. So that is row 5. So now we're ready for row 6. So for row 6 we are going to slip stitch across again just like we did with row 1, and actually it's going to be 6, 7, and 8. So think of it as a sequence. So each sequence counts as, or is made up of 4 stitches. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and just slip stitch all the way across. So slip stitching in the same stitch, and just slip stitch across for row 6. So I'm going to go ahead and work rows 6, 7, and 8, slip stitching across in my back loops, and I will meet you back. Okay, so I've already completed my 3 rows of slip stitch here. So we've got double crochet and 3 rows of slip stitch. So then I've chained 3 and turned to get ready to work my double crochet. So you're going to want to repeat these rows 5 through 8, and you're going to repeat until you get to row. We're going to work a total of 76 rows. And then we're going to get ready to turn this guy into a circle. So I'll meet you back at the end of row 75. Okay, so I have actually went ahead and worked 75 rows. This is the actual yarn that I want to use. So I wanted to go ahead and kind of pre-make this for you so you can see how it looks. So we have now we have made 75 rows, and now we need to turn this guy into that. And this yarn here is again number 4. It actually might be like Red Heart Soft or Karen Simply Soft. It's a soft yarn. I'm sorry, I'm not sure the name of the yarn because I did lose the yarn label. So anyway, so let's get ready to turn this into a circle, and then we'll be working in rounds. So I've already chained 1, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to have your wrong sides touching. and you're going to match up the end of row 1 with the ends of row 75 here, because we do want to have a total of 76 rows. So I've chained 1. So now I'm going to turn it over. So you want to turn. Sorry, I had to fix my yarn was getting all tangled up and messed up. So we're good now. So these are the ends of row 1. This is the end of row 75. So we have our wrong sides touching. So you can see it like that. And now we're going to join these guys to get going on our hat. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to work in the front loop of the ends of row 1. So that's why we worked in the back bump there, because it looks like the ends of that. And apologize, this yarn's a little dark because it's brown, but hopefully you can see what we're doing. So there's the front loop, and then we are going to work in the back loop just like we've been doing at the end of round 75. We're going to insert our hook. Come on. I did this row a wee bit tight, as I've warned you not to do that. And this hook is getting this loop's getting crazy, but I can just pull that end and we're all better now. So now we have 3 loops on our hook. So we're going to make 1 slip stitch out of these 3 loops. So pulling through, and there we go. I just need to pull in that tail there to close that guy up. So we're going to continue that across. So I'm working in my front loop here of the end of row 1, and back loop like normal at the end of row 75, and slip stitching through all of those guys. So you just keep doing that all the way across, and you do not want to cut your yarn at the end. And this creates an almost invisible seam. You can see it a little bit, but it does look fairly invisible, I think. I think it's a pretty good method here. So we've got 2 more stitches to go, so front loop there. Back loop of that one, pulling through. And then we're going to work on that chain 3 just on top of the chain 3. And finding that last stitch, she's real crunched up. There we are. And now we have turned this into a circle, so you can see it does create an almost invisible seam. It's just a little bit thicker than that guy. And our ribbing is all set, nice flexible ribbing there. So now we're going to get ready to work the body of the hat. So now we are going to work in rounds. Here we're going to get ready to start working in rounds. So I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet right in that same stitch there. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have a total of 60 single crochet around. So I like to just single crochet around that guy, kind of loosely, not too tight. I don't want to pull this too tight so it doesn't gap. You don't want it to gap too much. And then I like to work, you'll see it kind of looks like a V here, and I usually like to put my hook in the center of that V. It just kind of gives it a nice clean look there. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to work my 60 single crochet, and I will meet you back. Okay, so I have worked my 60 stitches here. So it did get a slightly crunchy at the end, but they're pretty well spaced. I think it was like the last 3. And that's okay. No one's going to notice. So once you've reached your 60 single crochet, you're going to slip stitch right in that first stitch. And then round 1 is complete. So we're going to get ready for round 2, and I'm turning this into a scrap project. So I'm using a whole bunch of different colors. I'm going to carry, actually I don't think I'm going to carry my colors. I think each row is going to be a different color, and you'll see what I mean. So I will be cutting my colors, but if you wanted to use just one other contrasting color, then you could just carry the color all the way up, or you could just work a couple rows of one color and, you know, or make it all one color. It's however you want to do it. So for round 2, we're going to chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet right in that same stitch. Now also, when you're working with different colors, you can have the one round all of the same color. I'm not going to be doing it that way. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to change my color now. So I have this white, it looks like a beige white. It looks more white, but it's definitely more beige in real life. And I'm going to slide it through. This is just my personal preference. You can do whatever you want, have fun with this project here. I'm going to, our next stitch is going to be stitch of the week. We're going to do a triple crochet in the next one, and it's going to make a puff. So there's triple crochet. Now to finish off this stitch, because we want it to puff, we are going to work a slip stitch in that same stitch. Oops. I'm catching on my ends there. Now I want to switch back to my brown because I want each stitch to be, it's going to be brown, white, brown, white. Instead of like all white all the way around. That's just the way I want to do it. So to finish off that stitch there, I'm going to pick up my brown and pull through those last 2 loops. And then you can just give it a little bit of tug and that will secure the stitch. So on the next stitch is going to be single crochet. Again, I'm going to pick up my white, pull it through, and then work the triple crochet. This is my easy version of a puff stitch here. And then to get it to puff, we're going to slip stitch. Now if you, what I mean is if you wanted all the same color, you could pull it through like that. Your next stitch would be single crochet. This way would definitely be a lot easier, but you know, I want to challenge myself, I guess. I think it's going to look cool. And then your next one is a single crochet. So your next is your puff with your triple crochet. And then you slip stitch right in that same stitch to complete the stitch. But I want it to look more like this, but you can certainly do it like that if you want to. However you want, you know, to do your rounds is completely up to you. So you're going to continue all the way around. It's going to be single crochet puff. So again, your puff is a triple crochet stitch and then a slip stitch right in that same stitch, and then that makes it puff out. So I'm going to continue with this round and I'll meet you back. Okay, so I'm just about done round 2, so you can see how I did that there with the different colors in between. You certainly don't have to do it like that. So now I am going to finish up round 2 because I want to start my next color. So I'm going to use red now. This is going to be like a rainbow, all different colors. A true scrap busting hat. So the brown's going to be the background, and then I'm going to have all the bubbles are going to be different colors for each row. So I am going to finish off. So my last stitch was the puff stitch, which is the triple crochet and the slip stitch in the same stitch, and I'm going to join in my first single crochet here. And I've got my red. Now I'm going to cut the white because I'm not going to carry it. Now you could, if you were doing this method, or even if you were just doing the whole row one color, not alternating like I'm doing, like as I showed earlier, one row of white, you know, you can still carry up, you know, if you were doing what, let's say white and brown, you could carry your colors up, but because I am not. Okay, so what we're going to do now is our first stitch, we're just going to alternate. So our first stitch for round 2 was a single crochet, and then our second one was the puff stitch. Our first stitch for round 3 is going to be a puff stitch. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to work the puff stitch right in the same stitch there. Oops, this is really not good yarn. We're splitting all over the place. And it's okay to do the chain one if the stitch is a little crunchy, because we want it to be crunchy. And now I'm going to grab my brown to finish off the stitch, because I want to, where is she? There she is. So I am going to carry the brown. So there we are. And so now we're going to work in this puff stitch. So when you look at the puff stitch, you see it's technically made up of 2 stitches, the triple crochet and the slip stitch. You're only going to work in the triple crochet part, so just disregard the slip stitch because you don't want to add any stitches. So we're going to work in this guy, the single crochet, and I'm going to pick up my red and finish that off. And then on top of the single crochet, we're working the puff stitch, which is the triple crochet slip stitch. And you're going to do that all the way around. So it's the same thing as round 2, except every single crochet stitch you're going to pop in a triple crochet puff stitch, and every puff stitch, you're working only on that part, you're going to work a single crochet. So I'm going to keep doing this all the way around for round 2, and then I will, or for round 3, and I will meet you back. Okay, so I finished round 3. So at the end of round 3, we will join on top of our puff stitch. So as I said before, you're only working in the triple crochet part. So we're joining with a slip stitch. And I didn't switch to a different color yet because our first stitch, we're going to repeat round 2. So our first stitch is going to be a single crochet, and then on top of the single crochet, the next one's going to be the triple crochet puff stitch. So you're going to continue to alternate back and forth between rows 2 and 3. And I'm not sure how many rows yet. I did make a sample hat a long time ago, and I need to figure out how many rows there are. So I will certainly let you know. You'll see it across the screen of how many rows. So I'm going to keep going, repeating rows 2 and 3. Okay, so I said I would tell you how many rounds to work before we start decreasing it, because we need to start getting her into the hat shape there. So we have worked 14 rounds. So for round 15, we are, and as you can see, I've used a different color for each round. You certainly don't have to do that. And then in between each stitch, we have the color and then the brown. I mean, you could do, you know, one round all one color if that would be easier for you. This is just a personal preference. Just trying something out. Alright, so to start with the decrease, we're going to think of it as a sequence of 10. So we are going to be starting with our puff stitch. So we're chaining 1. This is stitch 1. And you'll work your triple crochet, because I've already joined for this round, so I'm working in this same stitch here. And then we slip stitch in there. And then I want to pick up my brown. Where are you, brown? And I've just been carrying my brown all the way up the hat. Now if you just had 2 colors you were using, you know, you could certainly carry the other color, and then you wouldn't have. I've been cutting mine because each round is a different color, so I will have a few ends to weave in. That's the downside. But I'm trying to use up some stash, so hopefully this will make a slight dent. Probably not, but alright, so we've got 1 stitch, so now we're going to work our single crochet, stitch 2, and then I'm going to switch back to my, this is actually like a lavender color. I don't know if it really shows up that well. So now we're at stitch 3 with our puff. So triple crochet and then slip stitch to finish her off there. So we've got stitch 3, here is stitch 4, so this is stitch number 5. And stitch number 6. So here we're at number 7. Alright, so now we're at stitch 8. We're going to be at stitch, so I just want to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now we're going to work a decrease stitch, and we're going to do it over 3 stitches because we want to keep with the puff, single crochet, puff, single crochet around. So it's a sequence of 10, so we're going to decrease over 3 stitches, so 8, 9, 10. So what you want to do is you are going to, as we look at our puff stitch here, it's made up of 2 stitches, the triple crochet and the slip. We are going to pull up a loop in the triple crochet there, and we're working in the front loop only. So there's 1 front loop, and we're going to do the front loop in the single crochet. So now we have 3 loops on our hook, and now we're back to our puff stitch, the front loop only, and the triple crochet part. So we have 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through 3 of those loops like that. And now I'm going to finish it off. So you would then yarn over and pull through, but I want to change to my other color. Finish it off to pull through. So we have created the 1 decrease stitch. So now I'm ready to go back to my sequence of, in this stitch here, of my triple crochet puff. So this is going to be stitch 1. And then it kind of looks more invisible when you work in the front loop like that. That's a nice little trick. I like the way it looks. So there's 1. So here's number 2 for stitch 2, 3, then we're at stitch 4. And now this is stitch 5. So we're getting close to the decrease part again, or together stitches, however you want to call them. I learned them as decrease. 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now we're back. Sorry, I'm bumping the camera and everything. Sorry about that. Back to decreasing. So as before, we're going in the triple crochet part of the stitch here. So here's 1. Working over 3 stitches, front loop and 2, and we're working in all of the front loops here. Just makes it a little less bulky. If you worked in both loops of the stitch, it would just be a lot of loops on your hook and just would kind of look chunky. And this way it kind of looks more invisible, the together or decrease stitch. So now we're going to yarn over, pull through 3 of those loops, and then I'm just going to finish off that stitch with my other color. And then we're back to our sequence. So you're going to want to do that all the way around the hat. So just, you'll work even 7 stitches, and then stitches 8, 9, and 10, you're going to work the decrease stitch. So I will meet you back at the end of round 15. Okay, so I'm finishing up round 15, working my final decrease here. And at the end of round 15, you will have a total of 48 stitches. So we went from 60 to 48. Actually, we are starting with a single crochet, so I'm going to finish that guy off. So for round 16, we are going to work even. So I'm joining in the triple crochet part there. So we're going to work even. So that is a chain 1, and we're going to single crochet because we're working the single crochets on top of our puff stitch. And I'm going to get another color here. Pulling out all the scraps. Only uses a couple yards, so if you only have a little bit of yarn, a couple yards, then this would be a really great project for that. So a couple yards for each round. So my next stitch is my puff. So I'm just going to work even all the way around my 48 stitches, and I'll meet you back at the end of round 16. Alright, so I have finished up round 16, so now we're ready for round 17, and it's going to be a repeat of round 15, but instead of a sequence of 10, we're doing a sequence of 8. So I'm going to chain 1 and get started with my puff stitch here because we have a single crochet. There we are. Still keeping up with my crazy color scheme here. So it's definitely a fun hat. So if you don't like a whole bunch of colors, this will not be a hat for you. But winter can get pretty depressing, so I think it'll be very cheerful. Alright, so we have 2 stitches now. So now stitch 3. And this is actually a blue. It looks kind of almost purpley through my viewfinder here. So we're ready for stitch 4. And stitch 5. Alright, so now we're ready for decreasing because we're going to do 6, 7, and 8 for our sequence of 8. So again, front loop in the triple crochet part, front loop in the single crochet, front loop in the triple crochet, or 4 loops, yarn over through 3, pull through 3, and then I'm going to finish up my stitch. If you weren't switching colors, then of course you would yarn over and pull through those 2. But there we are. So there is our first sequence of 8 here. So I'm going to continue that around, and I will meet you back at the end of round 17. Okay, so I'm finishing up round 17. At the end of round 17, this is my last decrease stitch. You will have a total of 36 stitches. And I'm going to join in my first, and for round 18 you're just going to work even. Oops, we're joining. There we are. So chain 1, single crochet, get my next color here, and I'm just going to work even all the way around for round 18. So we are getting closer to finishing up here. So I will meet you back at the end of round 18. Okay, so now we're at round 19, and we are going to decrease again. So now we're going to decrease in a sequence of 6. So I'm chaining 1, working my puff stitch in this single crochet stitch here. I'm going to grab my brown there. There we are. So this is stitch 1. So now we're at stitch 2. Stitch 3. So now we're ready to do the decrease because we're stitches 4, 5, and 6. So front loop in the triple crochet stitch there, front loop in the single crochet, grabbing that front loop again in the triple crochet part of the stitch, yarning over, pulling through 3, and then we're going to finish off that stitch with my navy here, navy blue, and there we go. So now I'm going to continue that all the way around. So now I need to work my puff stitch over here. So I'm going to keep going, working in my sequence of 6, and I'll meet you back at the end of round 19. Okay, so just finished up round 19. At the end of round 19, you will have a total of 24 stitches. So round 20, we're going to work even, and I will meet you back at the end of round 20. Alright, so now we are ready for round 21. So we are going to do one more decrease round. So you're going to chain 1 and work your puff stitch there, right in that same stitch as we've been doing. And we are going to be working in a sequence of 4. Alright, gotta find my brown. Okay, found the brown. Bit of drama there. Okay, so now we are actually going to start our decrease. So we've worked the 1, and now we need to work stitches 2, 3, and 4. So here is stitch 2, 3. Again, we're working in the front loops, pulling up our loops. So we got 3 loops in our hook, yarn over, pull through 3 of those guys. And then I'm going to pick up this is actually a purple. It looks blue, but it's purple. And finish that guy off. So you're going to continue that all the way around in your sequence of 4, and I will meet you back at the end of round 21. Okay, so I have finished up round 21. At the end of round 21, you're going to have 12 stitches. And I've already joined, so now we're going to close up this hole here. So we're going to use my method. If you've made any of my other hats, then you'll be familiar with this. If you're not, then you know, it's pretty easy. I don't think you'll have too many issues with it. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to grab another hook. It can be either the same size, 1 size up, 1 size down, or even 2 sizes down. I find that that's fine. I wouldn't really go 2 sizes up. I just think it would be a little bit the hook would be too thick there, but 1 size up, or 1 or 2 sizes down is fine. Or if you have the same hook, and you can use 2, or if you need to use 3, that's completely fine. And even if you have the hook with the the wider handles here, this works best on a straighter hook like I have here, but if you have one of those hooks that have the wider handle, it should still be okay. Just might need to use more than 2. So what you're going to want to do is you want to have your loop on here fairly snug, and this is a technique that I borrowed from knitting. I just think it looks a little bit cleaner and neater to finish up your hat. So your hook's on there pretty, not super tight, but fairly snug. And then you're going to insert your hook in the next stitch. So I've already joined here. This is our first one. So here is our second, our single crochet, and we're going to pull up a loop, and then we're going to leave that on there. So now I'm going to go to my next stitch, which is my puff stitch, and we work in the triple crochet part. Pull up my loops. I have 3 loops. So now I'm going to go to the single crochet, and I'm just going to pull up as many loops as I can fit on this hook till I can't fit anymore. So I can usually do it with 2, but if you're not, if it's just way too awkward with you, you can certainly use more than 2 hooks to do this. Alright, so I'm going to put 1 more stitch on there, and now I'm going to grab my second hook. And if you've knitted, it's going to look a little bit like double pointed needles there. So now I'm going to insert my hook in the next stitch here and just pull up a loop, and then just finish up pulling up my loops here. And it looks like we have 1 more stitch right there. Okay, so I have all of my loops on my hooks. And again, if you need to use another hook, that's fine. You can use as many as you need. I've used up to 3. I think I even used 4 once for a certain project, but usually I can use 2. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull through. It's like think of it as a giant slip stitch all the way around through these loops here. So you want to take your time. You don't want to go real fast, because if you miss one, then you have to start over, and that's such a hassle. You don't want to do that. So you're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through that one, that one, that one. You can even, if you need to use your finger to help you out. So now we've got all the loops worked off. So now we're going to put this loop on our other hook, and see my loop there, oops, beating up the camera, is pretty wide. You want that to be real snug on your hook. So now we're just going to continue pulling through. You can do 2 at a time. I've done this method a lot, so I'm pretty experienced at it, but if you're not, then I would take your time for sure. So now we've got all the loops worked off our hooks, and now you're just going to cut your yarn and take your end and just draw it through and give it a good pull. So you can see it looks a little bit neater, a little bit tidier than if you sewed it or stitched it closed with your, you know, like single crochet closed, or however, you know, you normally would close it. So now what I usually do is I just take my hook and I stick it through the hole that I just made. See there we go, in the center, and I just grab the tail, pull it through, and then I take the tail, where is it? There we are. And I just give it a nice, oops, sorry. Give it a nice tug there. And now you have a nice, neat, closed hole. So what you'll need to do to finish up your hat is, of course, weave in all of your ends. And if your little puff stitches, sometimes, you know, they might be puffing on the wrong side. You just give them a little bit of a pull them out to puff them out, and you'll be all set. So I hope you enjoyed this hat project, and I thank you so much for watching.